They called him a dirty, dangerous black street kid. The cop cuffed him like a criminal, but then the officer collapsed from a heart attack, and it was that same boy, the one everyone looked down on, who did the unthinkable. What happened next left the entire neighborhood in stunned silence. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The autumn wind whistled through the alley, carrying dry leaves that swirled and crunched underfoot. Distant rap music still echoed from the main street, but now it sounded like a sad, lost lullaby in the desolate space. The alley was damp and dark, enveloped by the smell of trash and a biting chill. In the alley, Dan, a police officer with a hardened face and the weary eyes of someone who had seen too many of the city's dark corners, stood facing a thin, ragged boy named Malik. Malik's hands were cuffed behind his back. "Come on, kid, tell me the truth. What are you doing here? The food's secondary. What's your main purpose? Don't play games with me," Dan growled, his face stern, even harsh. He'd been a cop in this neighborhood for years, and he clearly saw the scared yet cunning look in the eyes of street kids. Lately, there had been a few petty break-ins, and any new face lingering around made him highly suspicious. Dan believed Malik was casing the area or acting as a decoy for someone else. His fatigue and cynical beliefs about human nature prevented him from seeing the simple truth. This was just a hungry child. Malik lowered his head, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean anything. I'm just hungry." He felt the gnawing hunger in his stomach and the biting cold, wishing for just a little warmth. Dan frowned, taking another step closer, his voice growing harsher. "Don't lie. I've seen your kind before. You think I'm stupid. You're looking for something else, aren't you? Tell me." Malik recoiled a tiny step, tears welling up, his eyes blinking with fear. He tried to suppress a sob, simply shaking his head vigorously. Just then, a sound echoed from the end of the alley. The back door of Linda's diner creaked open. Mrs. Linda, a kindly middle-aged woman, was carrying a large trash bag out. She saw the scene, her eyes narrowing as she watched Dan questioning Malik. She knew Malik. The boy occasionally loitered around her diner, and she often gave him leftover food. "Zam, what are you doing?" Mrs. Linda called out, her voice filled with worry and a hint of annoyance. "Let him go. He's just a poor child. He hasn't done anything wrong." Dan turned to Mrs. Linda, his face annoyed. "Mrs. Linda, don't interfere. You don't understand. These kids are cunning. I'm on duty." Mrs. Linda slammed the trash bag down, a loud thump echoing. She stepped closer, her face showing clear determination. "I know this boy, Dan. He's never hurt anyone. You're scaring him. Take those cuffs off him." Dan was about to retort, but a searing pain tore through his chest. It came suddenly, like a sharp knife plunging straight into his ribcage. He grimaced, clutching his chest. Dan groaned, his voice breaking with pain, his face pale, sweat pouring down him. "Wah, damn it!" He tried to brace himself, his legs wobbling for support, but his body wouldn't obey. A faint whimper escaped his throat, and then he collapsed to the ground, dropping his notebook and a small bottle of pills from his pocket. The white pills scattered across the dirty ground. His breathing was rapid, each breath difficult, as if his lungs were being squeezed by an invisible rope. Malik panicked, his voice trembling, forgetting his handcuffs. "Oh, officer, are you okay? Officer—" Mrs. Linda also panicked, rushing over. Dan, what's wrong?" Dan lay there, eyes wide, breathing shallowly, trying to speak, but only weak groans escaped. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. He weakly pointed to the pill bottle, which had a tiny white pill just out of reach of his mouth. "Pills? Pocket. Can't breathe." Malik saw the small pill bottle and the tiny white pill lying scattered on the dirty ground, just inches from Dan. The boy knew it was emergency medication. He'd seen older people use it. His eyes darted to the alley's exit. Freedom was right there. He could just run. No one could catch a handcuffed child. But he remembered the old woman who had given him a warm bun when he was starving. He didn't want to see anyone die, no matter who they were, no matter what they had just done to him. A feeling of helplessness and compassion for the flickering life before him welled up in his heart. Malik knelt down. Dan. The autumn wind whistled through the alley, carrying dry leaves that swirled and crunched underfoot. Distant rap music echoed from the main street, a sad, lost lullaby in the desolate space. The alley was damp, dark, and filled with the smell of trash and a biting chill. In the alley, Dan, a hardened police officer, stood facing Malik, a thin, ragged boy whose hands were cuffed behind his back. "Come on, kid, tell me the truth. What are you doing here?" "Don't play games with me," Dan growled, his face stern. He'd been a cop here for years, accustomed to the scared yet cunning look in street kids' eyes. Recent petty break-ins made him suspicious. He believed Malik was casing the area or acting as a decoy. His fatigue and cynical beliefs blinded him to the simple truth. This was just a hungry child. Malik lowered his head, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean anything. I'm just hungry." He felt the gnawing hunger and cold, wishing for warmth. Dan frowned, stepping closer, his voice harsher. "Don't lie. I've seen your kind before." "You think I'm stupid? You're looking for something else, aren't you? Tell me." Malik recoiled a tiny step, tears welling, eyes blinking with fear. He tried to suppress a sob, shaking his head vigorously. Just then, the back door of Linda's diner creaked open. Mrs. Linda, a kindly middle-aged woman, carried a large trash bag out. She saw Dan questioning Malik, eyes narrowing. She knew Malik. He often loitered around her diner, and she'd give him leftovers. "Dan, what are you doing?" Mrs. Linden called, worried and annoyed. "Let him go. He's just a poor child. He hasn't done anything wrong." Dan turned to her, annoyed. "Mrs. Linda, don't interfere. You don't understand. These kids are cunning. I'm on duty." Mrs. Linden slammed the trash bag down with a loud thump. She stepped closer, determined. "I know this boy, Dan. He's never hurt anyone. You're scaring him. Take those cuffs off him." Dan was about to retort when a searing pain tore through his chest, like a sharp knife plunging into his rib cage. He grimaced, clutching his chest. Dan groaned, voice breaking, face pale, sweat pouring. Damn it. He tried to brace himself, legs wobbling, but his body wouldn't obey. A faint whimper escaped, and then he collapsed, dropping his notebook and a small bottle of pills. White pills scattered across the dirty ground. His breathing was rapid, labored, as if his lungs were squeezed. Malik panicked, voice trembling, forgetting his handcuffs. "Oh, officer, are you okay? Officer!" Mrs. Linda also panicked, rushing over. Dan, what's wrong?" Dan lay there, eyes wide, breathing shallowly, trying to speak, but only weak groans escaped. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. He weakly pointed to the pill bottle, which had a tiny white pill just out of reach of his mouth. Pills. Pocket can't breathe. Malik saw the small bottle and the pill on the dirty ground inches from Dan. He knew it was emergency medication. His eyes darted to the alley's exit. Freedom was right there. He could run. But he remembered the old woman who'd given him a warm bun. He didn't want anyone to die, no matter what they'd done. A feeling of helplessness and compassion swelled in his heart. Malik knelt. Dan, with a weak effort, tried to reach the pill with his tongue, but was too weak. Malik understood. The boy quickly used his shoulder or chin to gently nudge the pill into Dan's mouth, his small lips touching the man's cold skin. A hot tear rolled down Malik's cheek, not from fear, but from compassion for the struggling life before him. Malik spoke with a trembling but resolute voice, suppressing his fear. "Hang in there, officer. Wake up. I won't run. Let's save you first." Mrs. Linden was also fumbling with Dan. Without hesitation, Malik scrambled up, then ran quickly to the edge of the alley, eyes fixed on a nearby gas station with lights and noise. Malik screamed at the top of his lungs, his voice breaking in the cold wind, echoing through the alley. "Help! Call 911! Someone is very weak! The officer isn't going to make it!" Mrs. Linda didn't hesitate, quickly pulling out her phone, dialing 911 with a panicked, trembling hand. "Hello, 911. A police officer collapsed in the alley behind Linda's diner. Right now. Yes, on 63rd Street. Need an ambulance urgently." The ambulance siren grew louder, tearing through the night, bringing a fragile glimmer of hope. The ambulance siren wailed through the night, getting closer, finally stopping abruptly. Emergency room doors opened, revealing a chaotic scene. Nurses and doctors moved briskly under harsh white lights. A medical team rushed Dan inside on a gurney. His face was pale, lips blue, breathing shallow. Linda followed, extremely worried. She glanced at Malik, whose small hands were still cuffed behind his back, face smeared with tears and dirt from the alley. A head nurse stopped Linda. "Excuse me, ma'am. You can't go inside. We'll take care of him." Linda spoke urgently, tears welling. But he's my friend. Please save him." The nurse looked at Linda with empathy. Then her gaze shifted to Malik's cuffed hands, frowning slightly. "And this child?" Linda quickly grabbed Malik's shoulder, voice trembling. He's the one who saved him. He had a heart attack, and this boy ran to call me and even tried to get him the medicine." She pointed to Malik's cuffed hands, indignant and pitying. "He's still handcuffed like this." The head nurse looked at Malik, her expression changing from puzzled to surprised, then deep compassion. She nodded to another nurse, then turned to Linda. "All right, you can wait here. We'll do our best. As for the boy, we'll inform the duty officer to handle it, but first, uncuff him. He needs care." A duty officer, indifferent, approached, scanning Malik and the handcuffs. He hesitated, then reluctantly pulled out the key, slowly uncuffing Malik's small wrists. A dry click echoed, freeing the boy's hands. Malik rubbed his wrists, bewildered and relieved. Linda breathed a sigh of relief, pulling Malik into her embrace, holding him tightly as if to protect him from the world's harshness. "Thank goodness, child, thank goodness." The steady hum of the ventilator echoed from the emergency room, mingling with hurried footsteps and worried whispers. Linda and Malik sat on cold metal chairs in the waiting area. Linda still held Malik, occasionally patting his back, conveying warmth and safety. Mrs. Linda's eyes constantly watched the emergency room door, her face tense. She whispered, worried, "Officer Dan will be okay, child. He's strong." She tried to reassure Malik, but truly she was reassuring herself. Malik looked up at Linda, eyes red but less frightened. He nodded faintly, then buried his face in Linda's shoulder, seeking warmth. A moment later, Dr. Martin, a middle-aged man in a white lab coat, emerged from the emergency room. His face was tired, but eyes showed relief. Linda quickly stood up, eyes fixed on the doctor, holding her breath. Linda asked hurriedly, voice trembling, "Doctor, how is Dan? Is he okay?" Dr. Martin nodded, a tired smile on his face. "He's fine. It was a pretty severe heart attack, but we treated in time. He's very lucky." He looked at Linda, then at Malik, then back to Linda, his voice full of meaning. "Partly thanks to this boy's quick reaction." Linda looked at Malik, eyes filled with pride and gratitude. She squeezed the boy's hand. The doctor continued, "But he'll have to stay here for a while to recover and be monitored. You can visit him tomorrow morning." Linda nodded frantically, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Thank God! Thank you, doctor! Thank you so much!" She turned and hugged Malik tightly again, choking up. "Son, you saved Officer Dan." Malik looked up, and in that moment felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't the warmth from his worn hoodie, but from being recognized, called son, and from the meaningful act of saving a life. The faint morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the sterile white hospital room. Dan lay there, his complexion much better, though still tired. He was slowly waking up, drowsy eyes looking at the ceiling. The room door creaked open. Linda entered, carrying a small bag, her face much brighter. She walked to the bedside, looking at Dan with a worried but gently chiding gaze. Linda spoke, with relief mixed with teasing. "So, you're alive, Dan? You scared me to death. I told you to take care of yourself." Dan winced slightly, trying to sit up but still in pain. He exhaled sharply, voice hoarse. "Linda? I caused a big problem, didn't I?" Linda shook her head, eyes full of tenderness and forgiveness. "Not a problem. You were saved. And the one who saved you was the boy you handcuffed last night, Dan." Dan froze. He stared at Linda, memories flooding back. The thin boy's scared eyes, cold handcuffs. And then the blurred image of the boy bending down, trying to get him medicine despite his tied hands. Regret and shame washed over him. He closed his eyes, a single tear rolling. He blamed himself. He treated the boy like a criminal, worthless, judging him with prejudices about this neighborhood's street kids. Yet Malik hadn't abandoned him. He'd saved his life. Dan was the one who should be ashamed. He'd lived in anger, always blaming kids like Malik for his own difficulties. Now he saw the truth because of Malik. He owed Malik a chance, a better future. Dan whispered, almost a confession. The boy. He saved me? How did I treat him? What did I do? He blamed himself, voice trembling. Linda placed a hand on Dan's shoulder, patting him gently to reassure him. She looked at him with profound understanding. Yes, he did. He's a good kid, Dan. You were wrong. But now you have a chance to make it right. There's a boy who needs help, Dan, and I think you're the one who can do it. Dan opened his eyes, looking at Linda. No longer a hardened look or prejudice, but remorse, regret, and a glimmer of hope, a change sparking. He knew his life had taken a different path, and Malik was the start. The next morning, cheerful bird chirps outside blended with warm sunlight, brightening the sterile white hospital room. Dan lay on his hospital bed, looking much better, though still tired. Mrs. Linda was there, looking at Malik with completely different eyes than last night, filled with respect and self-reproach. Mrs. Linda turned to Dan, then to Malik. She began to recount, voice slow, a profound reminder. The boy. The way you acted last night. I've never seen anyone like that. Your kindness. It reminds me of a lesson I once learned. Long ago, as a child here, people judged me, believed false rumors. Officer Dan... He intervened, just a word, but it helped me out of a difficult situation, a big misunderstanding. That taught me appearances aren't always the truth, and sometimes a small act of trust can change a person's entire life. I tried to tell you last night, Dan, but you didn't listen. I won't repeat the mistake of judging others by their appearance anymore. I will help this boy. Dan listened, eyes slightly surprised as she recalled an old story, a faded memory suddenly vivid. He nodded faintly, acknowledging. He turned to Malik, eyes filled with gratitude and regret. Dan took Malik's small hand, voice hoarse but sincere. Malik, you saved my life. Mrs. Linda is right. I was wrong, terribly wrong. I owe you a chance, a better future. And I owe Mrs. Linda an apology for not believing her last night. Mrs. Linda, I hope you'll take in this boy. I believe you're the best person to help him. I'll do everything I can to support you and Malik. Malik looked at Dan and Mrs. Linda, eyes full of hope but also apprehension. He spoke softly. I just want people to see me, not some prejudice. I just want a chance. Oh, Officer Dan, I have another friend. Her name is Tasha. She also lives on the streets. She's very smart but also very stubborn. She needs a chance like me, too. Dan looked at Malik, nodding slowly. He'd seen Tasha loitering before, that sharp but wounded look in her eyes. If one boy can make me change, then one girl can also find the light, he told himself. All right, Malik. I'll try to help Tasha too. A faint, hesitant smile appeared on Malik's lips, like a flower blooming after a storm. Mrs. Linda's diner became Malik's first real home. Early mornings, when sunlight streamed through the window, the boy would wake to the comforting smell of coffee and sizzling from Mrs. Linda's kitchen. Malik quickly donned his apron and began work. Mrs. Linda taught him not just how to wipe tables and serve customers, but also how to brew coffee just right, chop vegetables evenly, and offer a natural smile. Malik learned quickly, his eyes gleaming with a thirst for knowledge. Mrs. Linda noticed his meticulousness, picking up every fallen grain of rice, cleaning every nook, reminiscent of how he used to secretly clean trash behind her back. Evenings after closing, Mrs. Linda often sat with Malik, teaching him simple math or reading old newspapers. She was more than a diner owner. She was a grandmother figure. Malik's first teacher. She saw innate intelligence, a hunger for learning the streets had suppressed. You're very smart, Malik. she'd say, gently stroking his messy hair. You deserve a better future than these alleys. Dan, recovering and facing scrutiny from colleagues like Harris, began his serious journey of atonement. In his free time, he threw himself into finding support programs for street children. He called community centers, nonprofits, and local schools, asking about enrollment, scholarships, or any assistance for Malik and Tasha. One afternoon, Dan visited an old community center in South Chicago. He met Maria, an older woman with white hair but warm eyes, who ran a program for homeless and disadvantaged children. Dan passionately presented Malik's and Tasha's stories. Maria listened attentively. She nodded, offering a sympathetic smile. We have a program. It requires commitment from the children and support from adults. We'll help them with books, uniforms, and a meal. Dan felt a spark of hope. Maria, I've looked into the center's program very carefully. I truly believe this is the best path for Malik, and for another girl named Tasha, too. I don't just want to refer them. I also want to volunteer my time. I can help transport the children, or even act as a mentor, talking to them about life choices. I want to make sure no child has to go through what I used to think about them. Dan's words were no longer just duty, but a deep commitment. Tasha still frequently visited Mrs. Linda's diner. She stood from a distance, her sharp street eyes watching Malik work. She saw Malik wasn't just paid with meals and clean clothes, but with care and kind guidance. She saw Dan often visit not as an officer but a friend, an older brother. He brought books for Malik, patiently explained math, and had serious talks about the future. Maybe promises aren't always lies. Maybe these adults aren't like the ones who used me before. That boy has really changed. Could I be like that, she wondered. Tasha had seen too many promises disappear. She believed in fending for herself, vigilance her only weapon. One afternoon, as Malik cleaned outside the diner, Tasha approached. Her cold demeanor remained, but her voice was softer. You look a lot better, Malik. Malik smiled sincerely. Yeah, I'm much better. Mrs. Linda is really good. Officer Dan, too. He's even trying to get me into school. Tasha frowned, her old skepticism resurfacing. School? You think you can get out of here that easily? I've seen plenty of promises, Malik. Don't trust anyone. Life only teaches you one lesson: fend for yourself. She remembered betrayal. Vigilance was her only weapon. Malik looked straight into Tasha's eyes, his own no longer fearful but determined. Not everyone is like you think, Tasha. Officer Dan used to arrest me, used to be prejudiced against me. But he's changed. Mrs. Linda, too, she used to believe in prejudices, but now she believes in me. If they can change, why can't you trust just once? Tasha fell silent, Malik's words touching her. She was still skeptical, but saw the clear change in Malik. He was no longer thin and haggard, but had gained weight, his eyes no longer despairing. Tasha turned away, but a seed of hope had been planted, stirring silently. The school bell rang clearly, cutting through the morning mist. Malik and Tasha stood at the school gate in new, slightly oversized uniforms, backpacks smelling of new paper. Malik looked at Tasha, eager and nervous. Tasha maintained her cold expression, but her eyes constantly darted around, observing with the wariness of a street child. Is this another trap? Too good to be true? Must be careful, she told herself. Dan stood beside them in a simple jacket. He placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, then gently patted Tasha's back. Are you ready, kids? This will be a new beginning. Malik nodded eagerly. I'm ready, Officer Dan. Tasha remained silent, but didn't back down. She looked into the schoolyard, then at students reading under a tree. Curiosity mixed with longing flickered in her sharp eyes. Dan smiled faintly. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he believed in them. Go on, I'll wait here. As Malik and Tasha walked through the gate, blending into the stream of students, Dan watched their small figures. He felt relief and pride. This was the first step, a steady step out of the street's darkness. The first days at school weren't easy. Malik, gentle and eager, quickly adapted. He absorbed knowledge like a dry sponge, his eyes sparkling as Miss Evans, his dedicated teacher, patiently tutored him. Tasha was different. Cautious, she sat at the back, rarely speaking. She didn't fully trust this new environment. These kids are so naive. Who knows when it'll fall apart? During recess, she observed, watching Malik's innocence with a fleeting envy and growing curiosity. One afternoon, Malik excitedly told Tasha about planets. "Tasha, did you know Mars is red because it has a lot of iron?" Tasha just grunted, but she listened. A tiny smile briefly appeared when Malik spoke passionately. She began to realize learning opened a world more interesting than cramped alleys. "Maybe I should try to learn about Mars too," Dan continued as a different police officer, connecting with people instead of just making arrests. He visited poor neighborhoods, offering smiles and friendly greetings, slowly breaking down prejudice. One afternoon, near Mrs. Lindau's diner, Dan instinctively rushed to help a small boy who had fallen. The boy's mother, initially wary, softened, thanking him. "I've never seen a police officer like you." Dan smiled. "No problem, ma'am, I'm just doing my job." Suspicious glances from residents faded, replaced by curiosity and smiles. At the station, Officer Harris noticed Dan's change. He saw Dan talking to community organizations, carrying children's books. One day, Harris approached Dan's desk, sarcastic. "Busy with charity cases, Dan? Planning to be a kindergarten teacher? This neighborhood won't change." Dan looked up, calm but resolute. "Harris, I used to think like you, but I was wrong. I saw a child save my life, a woman take in a stranger. I saw sparks of hope. You might not believe it, but I do, and I won't give up." Harris looked at Dan, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He snorted and walked away, but Dan's words planted a small seed of doubt in his ingrained prejudices. Malik and Tasha's school life wasn't always smooth. Malik struggled with missed basic knowledge, often staying late, eyes tired but determined. "I'm still having a hard time," he confided to Mrs. Linda. "But at least I have a place to come home to now." Tasha, though smarter, faced whispers. "That kid was arrested," or "the street kid." Malik tried to ignore them. One time, as Malik struggled with math, a group of unruly students mocked him. "Hey, beggar, go back to your trash can." Suddenly, Tasha stood. She walked in front of Malik, eyes sharp. "What are you guys talking about? Mind your own business. Or are you afraid he'll get smarter than you?" Her cold, protective voice surprised them. They glared and left. Malik's heart filled with gratitude. Tasha, though still tough, was no longer completely skeptical. Protecting Malik was also protecting a part of the hope she'd buried. A few weeks later, a loud bang echoed from Mrs. Linda's diner, followed by frantic doorbell ringing. She rushed out. Standing at the door was a pale, young, homeless boy clutching his leg. The glass door had a large crack. The boy trembled. I didn't mean to." Mrs. Linden looked at the boy and the cracked glass, sighing. Malik and Tasha ran out. Tasha gave the boy a wary look. Another problem. "Always this kind of person." The boy stammered. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Linda, I'll pay for it." But his eyes showed fear and helplessness. He had no money. Mrs. Linden frowned slightly, remembering Dam's story about prejudice. She saw the boy's fear. "He reminds me of myself, and of Malik. I can't let prejudice win." "Are you okay, son?" Mrs. Linda asked softly. "Are you hurt anywhere?" The boy looked up, surprised. I'm okay. Just a little pain." Mrs. Linda nodded. "All right. Come inside. Let me look at your leg." She didn't mention the broken glass, only worried about the boy. Inside, Mrs. Linda carefully examined and bandaged his leg. She didn't scold him, only asked about his family and schooling. The boy, initially wary, slowly softened. Later that week, Dan visited the diner. He saw the boy, whose name was Marcus, now sitting with Malik and Tasha, sharing hot French fries. Marcus looked up, a hint of shame in his eyes. "What happened here, Mrs. Linda?" Dan asked, looking at the cracked glass. Mrs. Linda recounted the story. Dan looked at Marcus, then back at Mrs. Linda. You didn't call the police? Mrs. Linda shook her head. I think this boy needs a chance, Dan, like Malik. Maybe. This boy is just lost too. Dan looked at Marcus, understanding in his eyes. I was wrong to judge Malik. Now I see Marcus is just a kid struggling. This is a chance for me to correct my mistakes. Marcus, Dan said, his voice warm. You know you caused trouble, right? Are you willing to make amends? Marcus nodded frantically. Yes, Officer Dan, I'll do anything to make up for it. Good, Dan said. So starting tomorrow after school, you'll come here and help Mrs. Linda. You'll work hard to pay for this glass. And more importantly, you'll learn to take responsibility. Marcus looked at Mrs. Linda, then at Dan, his eyes no longer fearful or stubborn, but with a new spark of hope, a sense of relief. Tasha stood nearby, witnessing everything. Months passed. The diner became a hub of quiet transformations. Malik thrived in school. Tasha opened up, a genuine smile now occasionally gracing her lips. Marcus worked diligently at the diner, his shame replaced by purpose. He enrolled in school, too, finding an aptitude for mechanics. One sunny afternoon, Dan walked into the bustling diner. The air was filled with coffee aroma and warm chatter. Malik expertly took orders, Tasha wiped tables, and Marcus meticulously polished the sparkling new glass door. Dan sat at the counter. Mrs. Linden placed a slice of pie in front of him. They're good kids, Dan, she said, her eyes twinkling. Dan smiled, a deep, contented smile. They are, Linda. They truly are. He watched the three young people, once lost and vulnerable, now part of something real, something good. He knew his journey was far from over, that there were always more children who needed a chance, more hearts to reach. But here, in this small, vibrant diner, surrounded by genuine connection, he saw a beautiful truth. That even in the toughest streets, kindness, given freely, could build an unbreakable bridge to a brighter future. He, the once cynical cop, was now an essential part of that bridge. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.